Today I'm going to be showing you what a ball would look like in a fourth spatial dimension, a 4D ball. So I'm going to be showing you what a sphere would look like if there were a fourth spatial dimension. And then what would it look like if there was some 4D being that was going to move that sphere through the fourth dimension? What would it look like in our 3D space? And what other cool stuff could they do if they move stuff around in 4D? What would it look like in our 3 dimensions? So we live in a universe that has 3 spatial dimensions. That means you can go this way, you can go this way, and you can go up and down. For example, I have this cube here in 3 dimensions. But what would it mean if I were only to look at this cube in 2 dimensions? Well, because we only have 2 dimensions, it means we can only go this way and this way, but not up and down. So it's the equivalent of taking a slice of this cube. So instead of having a cube now, I take a slice of it. So now this is just called a plane. It has the x and the y axis, so it has these spatial dimensions, but it has no up and down. So that means when you look at it sideways, all you see is a line. So now we have a world that's only 2 dimensions. What would a sphere look like in these 2 dimensions? Well, because everything in 2 dimensions is just a slice of 3 dimensions, instead of a sphere that has up and down to it, you would only get a slice of that sphere. So a sphere would now look like a circle. So the first thing I want you to notice about this 2-dimensional circle is that for me in 3 dimensions, looking at this 2-dimensional plane, I can see the entire circle at one time. I see everything, the inside of it, the outside of it, everything, all at once. But for somebody living in this 2-dimensional world, they don't see a circle, but they see a line. You can see what I mean as I start from above, I can see the entire circle, but as I come onto the plane, that circle shrinks down and gets flatter and flatter and flatter until eventually it just becomes a flat line. So if these 2-dimensional beings live only on this flat plane, all they see is lines. So what would a sphere look like to this 2-dimensional person? Well, remember that a 2-dimensional person can only see a slice through the sphere, and they would only see it if it's in their plane. Anything outside of it, they can't see. They only see what's in this plane here. So in order to see this, I would have to move it into the plane. But what it would look like from their point of view, it would look like a circle just suddenly appears and then gets bigger and then smaller and then disappears. And so me as a 3-dimensional being moving this 3D object through their 2-dimensional plane would seem quite mystical. It would seem like things suddenly appear, then disappear, appear, then disappear. And with that in mind, now we can start to understand what it would be like for a 4-dimensional being to move a 4-dimensional object through our 3-dimensional space. So I'm going to show you what it would look like if a 4-dimensional being was to move a 4D sphere through our 3-dimensional space. It would be similar to the 2-dimensional circle, starting small, getting bigger, and then going small again. But it would be in 3 dimensions. So it would look something like this. Okay, so here's my 4-dimensional ball. And what you're actually seeing is the very tip of the 4-dimensional ball. This is the small circle, but because we're in 3 dimensions, it's the small sphere at the tip of the 4th-dimensional ball. And I can move it around and do anything that I want with it, but watch what happens when I summon the powers of a 4th-dimensional being to move the ball through the 4th dimension and through our 3D space. Well, it would look something like this. Okay, they're moving it through the 4th dimension, and as he's moving it, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And stop. So now you can see, as it got moved through the 4th dimension, the size changed in our 3 dimension here. So now we have a larger sphere, but we're not quite to the center of the 4-dimensional spheroid. So let's set it down and have the 4th dimensional being move it through the largest diameter that shows up in our 3 dimensions. Okay, and go. So now it's moving through the 4th dimension, which is making the sphere get bigger and bigger and bigger in our 3 dimensions. Until finally we end up with this. So now the 4-dimensional spheroid is at its largest diameter in our 3-dimensional space. And so now I have a very large sphere. So we know that a four-dimensional being could suddenly appear, then disappear in our three-dimensional space, could make objects randomly appear, disappear, change shape altogether, and it would seem quite mystical. But here's an even weirder thing that a fourth-dimensional being could do. They could turn you into your own mirror image of yourself. Let me show you what I mean. So going back to our analogy in 2 dimensions, here's our 2-dimensional guy. So now suppose in this 2-dimensional world, he's looking at this object, there's also a mirror behind it. So this line represents a mirror. So looking in that mirror, the mirror image looks like this. But no matter what he does in this 2-dimensional world, he cannot get this object to look like its mirror image other than just looking in the mirror. But me as a 3-dimensional being, I can come in and I can take it out of this 2-dimensional world, flip it, and now it becomes a mirror image of itself. So because I was a 3-dimensional being and I was able to take it out of this 2-dimensional world and flip it in my 3-dimensional world, now this is permanently the mirror image of itself for this 2-dimensional person now. So the same can be said in 3 dimensions to 4 dimensions. That means that this 4th dimensional being could take this pretzel bag, flip it in the 4th dimension, and now it would be permanently a mirror image of itself in our 3-dimensional world. In fact, you would never be able to hide anything in our 3-dimensional world from a 4th dimensional being. Everything would be present at the same time. They'd immediately be able to see what is inside this box. Similar to how I can instantly see what's inside this box, but this 2-dimensional person wouldn't be able to see it because it's being blocked by the outside. So it would be quite amazing to see some 4th dimensional thing moving through our 3 dimensions and making things reappear, change shapes, do all sorts of different things, even making mirror images of things. But is there a 4th dimension of space? Well, actually there could be. String theory actually suggests that there's 11 spatial dimensions, but only 3 of them are big enough to notice. So we have 3 spatial dimensions that are big enough to see any changes, but the other dimensions aren't big enough to notice any difference with movement. Hey everybody, thanks for watching another episode of the Action Lab. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you're not subscribed yet, remember to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified when my latest video's out. And